Ray Suarez has our story.
Let's put on some music round here.
Entertainer Bill Cosby is known for making people laugh, but this summer he's been at the center of controversy for his tough talk aimed at some in Black America. Most recently at a Rainbow Push Coalition dinner in Chicago earlier this month, where he criticized some black men.
You young men and old men, you've got to stop beating up your women because you can't find a job, because you didn't want to get an education.
Speaking to the mostly black audience, Cosby disparaged the casual use of racial slurs by African-American entertainers.
When you put on a record, and that record is yelling this and that and cursing all over the thing, and you got your little 6-year-old, 7-year-old sitting in the back seat of the car, those children hear that.
And he said too many black parents are avoiding personal responsibility.
It is almost analgesic to talk about what the white man is doing against us. And it keeps a person frozen in their seat.
Cosby came under fire for those comments.
It gives a society that may have racist tendencies at times to see it as a pass, an excuse, and say, see, they're not doing for themselves. While so many African Americans are working very, very hard.
It was the second time in 2 months Cosby's remarks drew controversy. In May at Howard University, Cosby said this: the lower economic people are not holding up their end in this deal. These people are not parenting. They're buying things for kids, $500 sneakers, for what? And won't spend $200 for Hooked on Phonics. He further clarified those remarks on PBS's The Tavis Smiley Show in May.
What I'm saying here, and the mistake I made, was in saying that there are people who are striving and working in the lower economic area. The people who are not holding up their end is quite obvious to me, and that happens to be those people who don't have a clue in terms of what education, learning standard English, math, and graduating from school, what that has for them in terms of empowerment.
Cosby appeared earlier this week at the NAACP convention in Philadelphia, but steered clear of any controversy and stuck to comedy. 2 viewpoints now on Cosby's comments. Dr. Alvin Poussat is a psychiatrist at Harvard Medical School and the Judge Baker Children's Center in Boston. He also was a script consultant to The Cosby Show. Ta-Nehisi Coates is a writer for The Village Voice and a contributor to several other magazines. Well, Dr. Poussat, Bill Cosby said what he said, then he clarified and extended his remarks. Do you agree with the thrust of what he had to say?
Well, I think I agree with the thrust and his concern. I think a lot of people interpret it as him bashing black people or black poor people. He clarified himself and said he was not talking about all black poor people and so on. And of course, a lot of black middle class people aren't doing the right thing too. But I think the spirit of what he said was he felt that the black community, particularly people who are not making it, should be paying more attention to education. Basically, he was saying that, and that parents should be paying more attention to good parenting because a lot of bad things were happening to our youth. And I think that's pretty obvious that it is. It's at a crisis proportion in many of our cities. In Baltimore, 76% of black males don't graduate from high school. Of the 2 million people in jail, about 45% are African American, most of them males. Of the homicides in the country, about 45% are African American males, mostly killing other black people and black males. So there is a crisis, and the dropout rate from high school is still very high. It's better, but it gets camouflaged in the statistics. In Baltimore, again, 50% of ninth graders don't graduate from high school. Well, if you get pockets of like that in urban areas like Philadelphia, Baltimore, Chicago, Los Angeles, there's a serious problem for the black community, and I think he was saying people have to pay attention to it. He made remarks in Washington when the NAACP president was there because he wanted to call it to the attention of the leadership in the country, and he wanted to make his statements go national. Perhaps he didn't say it with the best finesse and so on, but I think he was talking symbolically most of the time. People have attacked him because of statistics. Well, I'll tell you, unless you have the statistics in front of you, you're gonna get into trouble. I get into trouble trying to use statistics. But I think basically what he was saying is that we have to salvage more of these young people who are going down the tubes, losing their lives and so on. And even though we have that very huge incarceration rate, and in some cities like Baltimore and Washington, close to 50% of the men, the young men particularly, are under the criminal justice system jurisdiction in one way or the other. So there are problems, and I think he was trying to call people's attention to it. I think
let me stop you right there
in that spirit.
Let me get a reaction from Ta-Nehisi Coates. You got a couple of pieces out of Bill Cosby's remarks. What provoked you to write and also respond to Dr. Poussaint?
Well, I think it's quite clear that, in the African-American community, there are plenty of problems, and we can, look at the statistics and see that. But in terms of Bill Cosby and the remarks he made on both occasions, I think this is really a case of perception versus reality. So when Bill Cosby calls out young African-American women and says that they're having 4, 5, 6, 7 babies at a time, I have to look at that and consider that the teen pregnancy rate over the past decade among young black women has declined by 40%. When he says that young black kids are not valuing education, I think that sort of disparages the very real fact that the gap in SAT scores between whites and blacks has been cut by half. When he critiques black criminality and sort of gives us this picture of young black boys running wild in the street, I think that stands in contrast with the fact that since 1994, the crime rates across the board have plunged, and particularly among young black men. None of that is to say that we don't have any, real problems. There have been studies here in New York that have basically concluded that among African-American men, the employment rate is around 50% or so. There have been plenty of studies that have looked at the fact that there are too many households in which there's only one-parent homes. So I don't think, it's so much that we are without problems. I think it's the nature and the way in which the dialogue is taking place. The solution to those problems don't lie in attacking the way people dress. They don't lie in attacking the way people talk. They certainly don't lie in attacking what people name their kids, as Bill Cosby did. My name is Ta-Nehisi. My son's name is Samari. My partner's name is Kenyatta. My best friend's son's name is Kamathi. All of these people are God-fearing, honest people who want the same thing that any other American would want. And when Bill Cosby points us out because of the way we talk, the way we name our kids, as opposed to sticking with the reality, you have to wonder how much of this is actually about reality and how much of it is actually about appearance.
Well, Ta-Nehisi Coates, is this a problem of a man who is in his late 60s, being somewhat removed from youth culture and just sort of spraying it with buckshot, or is this an attempt to provoke a conversation? Apparently, it's worked in getting people talking about some of the issues that he names.
Well, I would argue that, in fact, it actually hasn't worked. I can remember when this happened about, 10 or 15 years ago when Reverend Calvin Butts wanted to take on some of the issues that were going on in rap music, as, Cosby is trying to do right now. And what I remember of Calvin Butts, is most people my age remember, is him being angry and steamrolling a bunch of CDs. The same thing happened with C. Dolores Tucker, and it really didn't change anything. I have no problem with the debate. Some people have said, oh, Cosby's airing out dirty laundry. I think, if it's a real critique, let's have that critique. Let's bring our statistics to the table, and let's have that debate. But let's have it honestly. Let's not have it by demeaning people. And if we're going to have it, Cosby at least, it's not so much the problem that he's 60 years old. It's a problem that he's 60 years old and hasn't invested effort in researching the lives, the culture of young people. You can't watch 2 hours of BET or listen to a CD and then try to critique hip-hop any more than I can listen to one John Coltrane CD and try to critique jazz, or look at one episode of The Cosby Show and then try to critique the career of Bill Cosby. I think his critique, I really understand the issues. I understand why he's angry, but what we're getting is anger, and it's not helpful and it's not productive in terms of an intergenerational dialogue.
Dr. Poussaint, what do you make of the critique that, yes, As Ta-Nehisi Coates notes, there are real problems, but this didn't get at it.
Oh, I think there are real problems, and I think it is getting at it. I think the fact that Reverend Jesse Jackson had him out to address his convention, the fact that other black leaders all over the country, parents, people I listen to in the community, are all very concerned and interested in what Bill Cosby had to say. And most of them, I would bet, support what he said, that there are issues and problems that need to be addressed. And yes, everyone would agree that there's been an improvement in a lot of areas, but we're still far, far behind, and we shouldn't be complacent about our current problems. And Bill felt that people are too complacent and not doing enough. A generation gap, for instance, is that a lot of black youth now are anti-education and anti-intellectualism, who feel that getting an education is being white, is acting white. But we never had that in previous generations. This is something new. I think this is very, very disconcerting that black youth are culturally adapting such postures where a high school dropout rate is so high, when they're going to jail at increasing rates. It's really very, very high. And in jail, about 70% of inmates have not graduated from high school. So Cosby's plea around educating parents, really tending to their children, reading to them, teaching them how to speak standard English is well taken and very important. I'm a psychiatrist, and I focus on parenting all the time in black communities, and it's something that they welcome, in fact. And I think that we have an opportunity to do something here as the population and blacks are stirred up and interested in this right now because of what Cosby has done to really make a difference. And that means the whole community. That doesn't mean we should ignore racism. There's racism in the criminal justice system. It means we also need good schools. But if he mobilizes black parents, not only perhaps will they do better by the children, but also become active in fighting for better schools in their communities and interchanging more with the teachers. I think if we really want to find out some of the problems, we need to talk to school teachers in the community, parents in the community, where they're really having these types of problems. And they're not everywhere, but they are a significant part of black America at this time. We still have a poverty rate of over 25% in the black community, and many of these problems are associated with poverty, and we have to attack that on all levels of policy and so on. But in the meantime, we should not sit back and be complacent about being parents. We should always be struggling to overcome. That's been our history, to overcome and succeed against the odds.
Ta-Nehisi Coates, a call to action. Can if it starts with Bill Cosby and ends up being a dialogue among members of Operation Push, people who were delegates to the NAACP meetings, people who watched Tavis Smiley, does it eventually get to the people that Bill Cosby wants to reach?
No, I don't think it does. I think what I'm seeing right now is really a dialogue among people who are pretty much Bill Cosby fans and are of his quote-unquote generation, and by that I mean the civil rights generation. The problem here, and I think I heard a lot of it in what Dr. Poussaint, just said, it's not so much that we, as young people are arguing for complacency or arguing for a lack of a dialogue within the community. It's that I would hesitate to say the entire civil rights generation has made up its mind about young people. But in what Dr. Poussaint just said, I think I, heard the problem. When you say that young black people are anti-education, well, then there's really nothing to talk about because you've clearly made up your mind about young black people. Cosby has clearly made up his mind about young black people. It's not a sort of dialogue that comes at us that seeks to ask questions. It's a dialogue that comes at us having already formed conclusions. And, as far as I'm concerned, that's not a dialogue.
You have to speak the truth. If we have those types of problems, we have to face them. I think by denying them and refusing to look at them, nothing happens. The truth that there are a lot of it's a fact, not Cosby, but other educators and researchers, in fact, have given information and produced studies indicating that a lot of black youth feel that getting an education is acting white. And because of that, they turn against education because it's not hip to be educated if it's acting white and giving up your so-called authentic black identity.
Ta-Nehisi Coates, quick response.
I'm sorry?
Go ahead and respond to that point, please.
No, I mean, I would just stick with my original point that, if we're gonna have a dialogue, it cannot come from us making statements at each other. It has to come from us asking questions of each other. Missing in all of this, I don't see much dialogue with young black people. I have yet to see Cosby in any of these clips sitting down asking questions of young black people as opposed to making statements about them.
Ta-Nehisi Coates, Dr. Alvin Poussant, gentlemen, thank you both.
Miles away. Bill Cosby does not have to go to court over charges of sexual misconduct. Officials have decided not to prosecute the entertainer, saying there's not enough evidence against him. CBS News correspondent Trish Regan reports.
Comedian Bill Cosby is off the hook.
Out of the state, in the state.
Prosecutors have dismissed charges that he inappropriately fondled a woman, citing insufficient credible and admissible evidence to support her claims. Last month, this woman told authorities she went to dinner with the 67-year-old comedian in January of 2004. She says he gave her medication that made her dizzy, then fondled her at his suburban Philadelphia home. When she woke up, she claims her clothes were in disarray. The accuser's lawyer is outraged the charges were dropped.
It does send a message to other women when they want to come forward, especially against a celebrity, when they're treated in this fashion.
Adding to the hype over this case, Tamara Green, a woman with a history of treatment for substance abuse or mental health problems, recently claimed Cosby drugged and fondled her 30 years ago. Green says she wanted to come forward because the accuser's story was so similar to her own.
And when he got me home, he was going to assist me in removing all my clothes and put me to bed. And he sexually assaulted me then.
Cosby's